bill, and now I am on the side of I-10. So I am experiencing our transportation system firsthand. So apologies for not being there, but I had intended to. So I am deeply, deeply sorry about that. So are we all ready to go ahead and get started?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, perfect. I am going to ask that you just stop me if I'm talking, because it is a little difficult to see you all in that room. So if there's something that I need to do or haven't done or need to move into, please just let me know if that's good. Does that work for everyone?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you. Okay, so welcome, and let's do call to order. Welcome all to the meeting. Karen, will you please call the roll?
Certainly. Chair Russell.
Present.
Vice Chair Smith.
Present.
Commissioner Barrios. Just going to call in. Commissioner Carter.
Present.
Commissioner Dole.
Here.
Commissioner Farron.
Here.
Commissioner Fulcher. Here. Commissioner Micah. Don't forget to unmute. He was on the phone. Don't forget to do *6 to unmute your phone, commissioners. Commissioner Micah?
He's raising his hand.
Okay, he's raising his hand. He might not be able to hear. He's here. And Commissioner Tellez.
Present.
There we go. All right, we have a full house, Chairman.
Thank you. So we are hosting this meeting in person and via webinar. We ask all participants to mute your microphone or cell phone if not speaking. So if you are able, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Karen, will you start it for us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation indivisible with liberty and
All right, thank you. So we will now ask any commissioners who haven't previously introduced themselves to introduce themselves. For those on webinar, please remember to unmute your microphone or phone before speaking. Are there any commissioners either present or on the phone who have not introduced themselves previously? Okay. Hearing none. So since our last meeting, there have been a few member changes. Chris Young was appointed to serve on the University of West Florida Board of Trustees. Congratulations to him. Taylor Hatch was appointed as the new secretary for the Department of Children and Families. And today we have Lorena Fulcher. Lorena, did I just say your name correctly?
That's correct. Thank you.
Here representing APD, thank you for joining us. This is a public meeting and operates under Florida's Government in the Sunshine Act. This meeting is being recorded and all verbal, written, and text feedback will be logged within the meeting minutes. For those participating on the webinar or phone, please mute your lines. If you're experiencing technical difficulties, please comment in the chat box and someone from our team will try to address your concern. We advise commissioners on the webinar not to communicate privately via chat box or via chat with other board members in order to ensure discussions remain within the sunshine. For the public comment section, we will follow our usual format. The first public comment segment is intended for agenda items only. However, we welcome public comments on any topic during the second public comment segment. We have asked participants intending to speak to submit a public comment form prior to the meeting and indicate whether they are speaking on the webinar or by phone. We will first call on participants who submitted a form. For participants on the webinar who have not submitted a form and wish to speak, we ask that you indicate in the chat box that you wish to speak, and we will call on you after we call on those who have submitted a form. All speakers must identify their name, organization represented, and county of residence. Speakers are limited to 5 minutes for public comment. So the first public comment section, Karen, do we have any comment cards for speakers wishing to discuss any of the agenda items?
Yes, ma'am, we do. We have 4 comment cards that would like to speak to the agenda item in regards to the Innovative Service Development Grants. So our first public comment card is received from Chris Stevenson from the Senior Resource Association.
Hi, can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi, my name is Chris Stevenson. I represent the Senior Resource Association. We are the community transportation coordinator in both Indian River County and Martin County. And I live in Indian River County. And for the last 4 years, we've operated the Advantage Ride program in a 4-county area of Indian River, St. Lucie, Martin, and Okeechobee counties. And thank you for the opportunity to briefly speak today. Over the last 4 years, our Advantage Ride project, which has been funded by the Innovative Service Development Grants offered by the CTD, has made real significant strides, achieving outcomes that align with all of the goals of the ISD grant program. We've consistently demonstrated measurable success, such as providing over 190,000 trips to approximately 3,900 individuals in the developmentally disabled community. 92% of those trips are to places of employment or job training, and our riders report high customer satisfaction ratings every single year. And these results underscore the effectiveness of our innovative approach to tripping a highly vulnerable group of individuals. We think it's a perfect example of the Commission using the ISD grant dollars to solve a problem. And last year, the Commission limited the number of times a CTC could apply for an ISD grant for a single project at 4 years. And we would just advocate removing that 4-year limitation. While it was well-intentioned, it may not fully reflect the realities of projects like ours that require long-term engagement. Removing the limitation would allow us and other CTCs like us to build on the momentum that we've established and further deepen the positive effects of successful projects like ours. And I'll just close by saying we want to ensure that the investment made by this Commission continues to yield positive results in both cost savings for taxpayers and customer satisfaction for our riders. And I appreciate your time today.
Chris. Our next public speaker is Melody Hearn. Melody said she might have to step away for a moment,
Hello.
so we may. Oh, Melody, are you there?
Yes, if I can quickly move forward.
Ma'am.
I would greet the Commission on Transportation Disadvantage. I'm in a waiting room, so I'm going to make this quick. I have been advocating for this from probably 2015, 2016 on, when we've met with the governor, we've met with legislators, we've met with family care councils, we had town meetings of the APD. I've heard from teachers, I've heard from transition specialists, I've heard from our area. We are an area of black holes of services across service realms. This includes what I am governor appointed as a mother of an individual with intellectual disability has been trying to do for years, and that is be a positive parent influence, the family voice within the community upon which our tax dollars help to pay for these type of services. And I would plead with you across the families, across the Treasure Coast, Martin, St. Lucie, Indian River, and even Okeechobee. I know it's not within your service directory of this personal venue, but we had money put in from St. Lucie County and combined with the grants that we've had over the last several years, the innovation transportation grants, to provide not only my son the ability to attend an adult day training that's not within our county, but it has served an area. If we were to put St. Lucie and Martin over top of Palm Beach, it was probably about the same size. And look what they're doing for their individuals with Palm Tran and other rides. But we need this type of service to continue. We've proven the need. I don't know what more you need to see that we are an area that needs this type of service. Please, I plead with you for all the parents. This is just required to be able to give our individuals that community service, which they so are privileged to have. I know it's taxpayer money, but it's deinstitutionalization that we brought about by the ADA. And that was in 1990. So thank you for what you've done over the last years, but I'm pleading again, please continue this type or find something that will help continue the ridership that has been proven. Thank you for getting me in on this time, and I close. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Our next speaker is Miss Valerie Breen. She's here in the meeting room with us.
Hello, commissioners. Hello, everybody on screen. I'm Valerie Breen, Executive Director of the Florida Developmental Disabilities Council. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the council, we function under the Federal Developmental Disabilities and Bill of Rights Act and serve as the designated state agency, and Chapter 393 is a not-for-profit to manage federal funds under the DD Act. We're totally federally funded, and we do research, policy, and programs for persons with intellectual and developmental disabilities throughout the lifespan and secure system improvement and sustainability for long-lasting change. Why we are here today is to share just a little bit with you, who you may not be familiar with the history as new commissioners, on our partnership and to talk to you about increased funding and commitment. Transportation and employment have been two of our initiatives over the past 10 years together. 9 years ago, we used startup funds in partnership with the Department of Transportation and the Hillsborough Regional Transit Authority to create the Heart Plus Customer Choice Voucher Program. Its success is sustainable today, cost-effective, and provides 24/7 door-to-door services. This design was nationally recognized and propelled the FDDC to consider partnering with other transportation entities in rural and urban areas. The statewide study conducted by us indicated limited access to on-demand 24-hour day service, limited availability of transportation for a variety of trip purposes, and cost-prohibitive trip charges. All these factors impede the ability of persons with disabilities to secure and maintain employment, pursue training, and access the greater community. In the Heart Plus program alone, today they are doing 7,000 trips per month with an estimated $3.3 million in cost savings. And I have handouts on this if anyone is interested. Our data drove legislation in 2017 to establish the Task Force on Transportation Disadvantaged Services to examine the design and use of transportation disadvantaged services. Got a copy of that Senate bill. The task force met for 6 months and recommendations were made to the legislature. Two important points during that 6-month emerged. Both APD, Agency for Persons with Disabilities, and Transportation Disadvantage were required to provide unduplicated services. That was very difficult for them to do at the time. And existing funded programs through vocational rehabilitation and APD had limitations for long-term access to transportation. Voc Rehab could fund 3 months after employment. APD could fund if using waiver services and possibly for a limited amount of time for supported employment. So a year later in 2018, legislative session, there were two important outcomes that occurred. One of them was $250,000 directed towards a study to redesign APD's transportation model with the help of a transportation consultant toward a collaborative partnership with you all, Transportation Disadvantage. But the most important was 500,000 was allocated through the Commission for Transportation for an innovative grant program, which exists today that people are talking about, specifically for individuals with IPD, for a pilot door-to-door on-demand transportation program. In that year, the project was titled Advantage Ride, but it went to USERV at the amount of $475,000. The FDDC was part of that whole project to monitor it and continue to work with it. The innovative grant program moved from a pilot and has continued for the last 7 years and has resulted in other transportation initiatives, funded in part through FDDC's continued seed money for voucher initiatives. Today, FDDC is partnering with transportation providers who are and or have benefited from your innovative grant program with outstanding results in meeting the challenges. Door-to-door, 24/7, cost-contained, and cross-county services. The populations we are charged across the lifespan have led FDDC to look at your current innovative grant program where solutions began, to see how current projects funding our population can be sustained in the grant program if they are high-performing, door-to-door, 24/7, cost-contained, cross-county, and unduplicated services with positive performance counties who have cost-saving data and customer satisfaction data. In addition, cross-county remains a critical component, allowing the program to entertain applications from both CTCs and TNCs, transportation network companies, to provide services will allow for more innovation and access to service if they meet the qualifications of training and background checks. In addition, training has been created and implemented over these past 9 years that ensures better safety and interaction between drivers and individuals. In our meeting with staff, legislative staff, and transportation appropriations this session, we have been told that the 4-year limit is not a requirement, which allows the grant program to continue to fund entities and provide an opportunity for new ones to apply. This session, the FDDC is working with the legislature for an appropriation of $6 million to be put into the grant program. Currently, as you will see in our brief that we have and hear from, as you've heard from Treasure Coast, we're talking a large amount of individuals just in that one voucher initiative that we started are being served. And we're looking at June 30th of none of those individuals having access to those services. Their partnership with us, among others that we currently have, is critical in both disability and aging communities, another population that FDDC has been addressing for the past 5 years. We, as the council, are committed to continue our partnership with you to increase access to services for all persons with disabilities in all communities, and we ask for your support to improve access through the grant program. We are poised to work with you as a partner with the Commission to address criteria for the grant program to increase access and sustain long-term outcomes. Actually, at this point, y'all, you are the only sustainable conduit to success for what we've been working on for the last 10 years to start to achieve. So I appreciate your time today and hope for your consideration, and know that we are supporting and moving forward with this, and we hope that we will have the commission's support to do that.
Thank you very much. And our next public speaker is Adolfo Cavalli. Adolfo?
Yes, hello, can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. Good afternoon, members of the commission. My name is Adolfo Cavelli. I'm the St. Lucie County Transit Director. I live in St. Lucie County as well, and St. Lucie County is the CTC for St. Lucie County. I am here today to speak about the wonderful program that currently serves over 3,800 riders with intellectual and developmental disabilities throughout the Treasure Coast. For those of you that do not know, the Treasure Coast is located on the east coast of Florida, just north of Palm Beach County. The program that I am speaking about today is the Advantage Ride program. This program, which has been successful for the last 4+ years and has utilized all its grant dollars that were awarded, is set to end June 30th of this year. This program has been a huge success for a lot of reasons, but the main one that sticks out to me the most is the support of this commission. Both St. Lucie and Indian River County began this pilot program separately with the CTD and the Florida Developmental Disabilities Council to see if there was a need for this type of service. We found out quickly there was an overwhelming need. Indian River and St. Lucie County broke down barriers between the counties and partnered up for this program, which has been nothing short of exceptional. Indian River graciously took the lead on this and provided the trips for this program from basically the beginning, while St. Lucie County provided the match for these grants. Our riders and caregivers depend greatly on this service. Over 90% of these trips are for employment and job training for individuals that need this type of transportation most. This program puts these individuals on a path to succeed in this world by giving them opportunities to be employed. I cannot tell you how many times I've spoken to a caregiver and shed a tear with them because they were so grateful they could rely on Senior Resource Association's exceptional service with an amazing staff of drivers and dispatchers. A few also shared something with me which I personally took for granted, which was as a caregiver being able to run errands and go to the bank or the store because they knew their relative was in good hands with Senior Resource Association. I personally do not have a child with a developmental disability, so when I need to run to the store, I usually get in my vehicle and take care of what is needed. I knew from that point on that we needed to support these residents as much as possible. This program, which only has 3 months left of funding, will then be at the 4-year cap for ISD grants. I am here today to ask the Commission to consider other options as far as the ISD program and the 4-year limit goes. Can there be an opportunity for the limit to apply for this type of grant to be extended to 6 or 8 years instead of the 4 years it is currently at? Can the Commission consider phasing out funding rather than eliminate all funding for a program after 4 years, possibly awarding a smaller portion of funding for years 5 through 8 rather than eliminating us from applying for future grants for the same program? This program has been a huge success for our economy by putting residents to work and caregivers a chance to have part-time jobs and spend money in our community by having time to go to stores. Our riders rely on this service and our caregivers rely on this service. We are graciously asking for an opportunity to continue this program for the residents who need it most. Thank you very much for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Adolfo. Okay, that's all the public cards I've received so far, Chair.
Thank you all for your comments. So we'll move into the first agenda item. Approval of the December 11th, 2024 meeting minutes. The commission convened its business meeting on December 11th, 2024. Draft minutes were provided in the CTD business meeting packet. Are there any edits to the minutes? Hearing none, let's go ahead and take a vote. Oh, yes?
I'm sorry. Yes, can we change the meeting minutes to reflect that Commissioner Micah was in attendance at the commission meeting at the last meeting? We inadvertently put him on not attending because I think his phone system wasn't working well, but so we would like to make that amendment.
Anybody object to that amendment? Hearing none, so let's go ahead and take a vote on the meeting minutes as amended. All in favor of approving the meeting minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing no opposition, the minutes are approved. Next agenda item, the Community Transportation Coordinator designations. One of our primary responsibilities is to approve the designation of the Community Transportation Coordinator for each county or multi-county service area in the state. This entity is responsible for arranging the delivery of transportation services to the TD population in their community. This is usually a 5-year designation. Karen, could you please explain the designation process?
Certainly. The planning agency is responsible for the procurement process for the recommendation of the CTC. Like Chair said, it's your designation. The procurement process is the planning agency's procurement process. A lot of them follow the procurement process that's in Chapter 287. So a lot of them do like competitive sealed bids or competitive bids. Requests for qualifications, requests for proposals, or even requests for negotiations when there's only one respondent to the request. Services that are provided by governmental agencies are generally exempt from the competition or the competitive solicitation. And following Chapter 287, services are available by a governmental agency. Planning agency completes the procurement process and they submit their CTC recommendation to the commission. And then the commission has the authority to approve that appointment or also to revocate any CTC designation that we have any concerns of at that time. Once we approve the CTC, we enter into a memorandum of agreement with the CTC, and that kind of makes them eligible to receive DOT funding, our funding, and also provides them the opportunity to purchase things off a state contract. They can receive fuel tax refunds and also get X tags issued from highway safety motor vehicles. So this particular meeting, we have two CTC designations. In June, we'll have an additional 8 more. So just to kind of give you that background. And I think that's it. Chair, if you'd like to move forward.
Thank you, Karen. Question. So these are always individuals, or you said government entities are excluded or, don't have to participate in the procurement process? So would this be a government entity at some point as well? Or?
Yes, ma'am. Community transportation coordinators are actually agencies or entities. The planning agencies can be the Metropolitan Planning Organization or Regional Planning Council. That's the agency that makes that goes through the procurement process and makes the recommendation to the commission. They recommend to us an agency or an entity to be the community transportation coordinator. So it's not any individuals, but you'll see people speaking on behalf of those agencies.
Understood. Okay, so we are actually approving the Bay County TPO and the Ocala-Marion County TPO.
We're approving their recommendation.
Got it. Okay. All right. Thank you for that. So today we have two.
Sorry, Chair. This is Sam. Just to follow up, make sure I'm following that correctly. When you say it can either be the county commission, which it is for Bay County and for Ocala, but it can also be an entity like a private company?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Or not.
Or a nonprofit. Okay. And when it's a county, they don't have to go through the procurement
They
process.
generally don't go through a procurement process, correct?
Okay.
Because the governmental entity is already providing that service.
Okay.
Is one offered to the private sector though, or is it just if the county, if the government entity is choosing to participate, then that does not happen?
Generally, they ask the governmental entity if they want to continue to serve in the CTC role. If they say they do, then I think they move forward with that recommendation. Don't put it out any further than that.
Is there any like metrics or anything they have to go through, or is it more like reporting for their successes that they've and outcomes?
Not as criteria for recommendation. I know they do evaluations of CTCs each year to determine the performance and how well they're doing in their services.
When do those get reported to us?
To the full commission, we haven't done that in the past. They submitted them as deliverables as part of the planning grant because the planning agency kind of goes, everything kind of touches each other. The planning agency staffs our local coordinating boards. So the local coordinating boards are really tasked with doing the evaluation of the community, the CTC. Those are submitted as a deliverable in the planning grant, and they're done once a year. They're usually done probably by about the 3rd or 4th quarter of the grant cycle. So anywhere after January each year.
Okay. And then so that could be when a report from the various CTCs would be submitted to the board or given to the board, or?
The evaluation itself isn't a part of anything submitted to the commission. We can look into that if you guys want to start receiving that type of information. Their performance is actually reported in that annual operating report that we approved at the last meeting. As far as how many trips, how many miles, how many people, what type of agencies they serve. So that's more of a performance report. But as far as the evaluation of services, and that is something we've been wanting to look at for quite some time, to update our evaluation tool for the planning agencies to use, the local coordinating boards, as well as our commission staff.
Is that something that we as the commission like create and then push out to those entities?
We can definitely, yes, as a commission, be a part of that development. Yes, ma'am. We need to update those documents, definitely.
Commissioner Farren, is that something you would like to see on the next agenda?
I think it may be worth a discussion as we're looking at, like what the future of all the innovation grants and everything looks like.
Sure.
We can have reports from the innovation grant recipients at our next commission meeting or in a future meeting, if that would help also.
Question, if I may, is that, you know, when you bring in the recommendations, if there's some performance information that goes along, especially when you're talking about entities that we're recommending to move forward with staff. So the commission has that before.
Yeah.
Us to kind of say, okay, historically, this is where they've done, this is the data that goes along with the recommendation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Especially since you have 8 coming up in the next meeting.
We
It'd be
did.
good to have that
Okay.
background data.
Good idea. Yes, sir. We can include that. Yeah. Okay.
All right. Are there any other questions before we approve these 2 designations before us? Okay, so today we have 2 CTC designations before us. We have Howard Vanzelo from Bay County TPO and Elizabeth Mitchell from the Ocala Marion County TPO. Howard Vanzelo to present. Is Howard present or is he on the phone?
Virtual. How are you doing?
Good.
Yes, good
Howard, will you please present the recommendation?
Yes, ma'am. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and board members. Thank you for your time. Enclosed in your agenda for consideration is the designation of Bay County Board of County Commissioners as a Community Transportation Coordinator for Bay County Service Area. Bay County Board of County Commissioners, as a government entity, is able and willing to continue to provide transportation services. They have been serving in this capacity since 2013 with the experience and qualifications to serve the transportation disadvantaged population. I'm requesting the board approve the recommended action and designate Bay County Board of County Commissioners as the CTC beginning July 1st, 2025. I just wanted to add that during your discussion, you talked about, do we evaluate a government entity? I've had a few government entities that didn't do it for a long time. They're fairly new. 2013 is fairly new. Some people have been doing it for the whole time. So when a government entity is willing to do it, we do ask them a series of questions, trying to make sure they have the capability, finances, and the willingness to do this. So they do maybe not go through a complete RFP process, but they are making sure that they are able to serve in this capacity. And Bay County certainly is. They've done a great job over the last years. And it'd be great if they'd be able to continue. And I'd be glad to answer any questions if you have.
Thank you, Howard. I have one question. Have you, and I don't know if this falls on you, so forgive me if I am asking the wrong person, but do you all perform any sort of satisfaction surveys or customer feedback type activities so that we can get a glimpse into what the community
Yes, ma'am.
feels
So
about the service they're reviewing? Okay.
yes, so for Bay County, they actually do some surveys themselves, but we also do a rider survey that is submitted every year, and we do a 3-year comparison of the the previous years to see how they're doing. Some years we have really good turnouts, meaning like we'll have 20 to 100 surveys turned in, and some years we'll have like 10 turned in. So it's not always a great representation, but we do give the riders an opportunity to comment on the services. And then we also, our TPO also does a separate public survey that we do for our public workshop annually, just giving the community or riders additional time to make comment.
Okay. Karen, this question is for you. Are there any adverse incident reports on either of these entities submitted? To the-
No,
to the
ma'am.
state? Okay.
No, ma'am, I have not received any. But I do know Commissioner Micah has something. I think he's got his hand up.
Commissioner?
Yes, Madam Chair, can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Yeah, so I just, for those of you that may or may not recall, I'm the county manager in Bay. And so I think it's just appropriate at this time, before we get into actually taking a vote on this, that just to avoid the appearance of a conflict under Section 112, I need to recuse from this vote.
All right, definitely let the minutes note that. Thank you.
Okay, are there
With
any
us,
other
Chair?
questions? Yes, are there any other questions for Mr. Vansalo? Okay, at this time, we will vote. So all in favor of,
Need a motion.
okay,
Need to do a motion.
may I get a motion to approve Bay County TPO?
Commissioner Doyle moves approval.
It's Bay County Board of County Commissioners, right?
Yes, Fayette County Board of County Commissioners.
Do I have a second?
Sam Barron will second.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor of approving Bay County TPO, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Vansalo. Now we have Elizabeth Mitchell to present the recommendation for Marion County. Elizabeth, or Ms. Mitchell, are you on the phone or present in person?
I am on the phone. Can you hear me?
Yes. Go ahead, Ms. Mitchell.
Good, good. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and Commission members. My name is Elizabeth Mitchell. I am with the Ocala Marion TPO, and I live in Marion County. As the current CTC, Marion Transit assumes responsibility for ensuring coordination of local transportation services to our most vulnerable citizens. They have been serving Marion County residents since 1982 for all non-emergency medical transportation and for those needing wheelchairs or other assistance. Marion Transit offers a variety of routes that facilitate travel to essential locations. The system enhances mobility for all community members, including those with disabilities or without access to private vehicles. By providing reliable transportation options, Marion Transit plays a crucial role in enhancing the quality of life for all Marion County residents. The Ocala Marion TPO is proud to recommend Marion Transit Services to continue as the CTC for Marion County. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mitchell. Commissioners, are there any questions for Ms. Mitchell? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the CTC designation for Marion County?
This is Commissioner Carter, all motion.
Is there a second?
This is Commissioner Tellez, I second.
All right, let's go ahead and take a vote. All in favor of approving the CTC designation for Marion County, please say aye.
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 All opposed? Thank you so much, and congratulations, Ms. Mitchell. Okay, next on the agenda are several items of discussion. The first is DOT's Transportation Disadvantage Services Report. Vice Chair Smith, I have on here that you are set to present. Are you?
Yes, Chair. I'm ready to go.
Perfect. Great. All right. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Yes, and thank you, everyone. Good afternoon. As Chief of Middle Development for the Florida Department of Transportation, I am appreciative of the opportunity to discuss the Transportation Disadvantage report that we recently completed and was submitted to the legislature and the governor by the department for this one. So next slide, please. In this presentation, we'll review the legislation that directed FDOT to complete the comprehensive report on PD services in Florida. I'll briefly summarize the results of the report and then discuss some next steps as to what we as a commission can look into and maybe glean from the report as well for that. Next slide, please. So Senate Bill 1380, which passed during the 2024 legislature and signed into law by the governor, directed the Department of Transportation to prepare a report on the transportation disadvantaged services in Florida. The study of TD services was conducted and we submitted to the governor and legislature as directed in January. The report provided a current assessment of transportation disadvantaged services statewide, identified key challenges and opportunities in administering the program, and evaluated alternative formats for delivering services. I had the privilege to present these results to the Senate Transportation Committee. Some of you may have seen that on January 14th, 2025. And I'm excited to present some of those with you today as well. Florida is already a national leader for transportation disadvantaged services, which is evident by the creation of this body decades ago and the growth of the various programs that served this population. So thanks to the leadership of the legislature and the governor for directing FDOT to look into this important issue, we have a starting point and insights about where improvements are needed and where we as a body can continue to discuss and shape the program and grow on its success by focusing on the people that we serve. Next slide, please. So the report summarized the program challenges in 5 main areas. We have an inconsistent system. So we know this, there are over 400 coordinating entities leading to inconsistencies in how the programs applied across the state. That's going to happen with any program of that size as it comes to it, but how can we make that better? What we've also found is that individuals who are eligible for transportation services under certain healthcare programs are often also eligible for TD services. So trips may be eligible under multiple programs, making it difficult for both riders and transportation providers to determine who is ultimately responsible for trip delivery and payment. We also found that the cost of service, that demand response paratransit services make up the largest component of transportation disadvantaged services. And these are provided also the most costly trips at almost 5 times the cost of a fixed route trip. We also found that there's inconsistent performance reporting. Again, with this many players that are reporting and providing the services, we can see where that comes from. But what we see is a lack of uniformity in those performance standards as you look across the whole universe on this one. And further, CTC performance is not consistently measured since the standards and goals are established jointly by the local coordination boards and community transportation coordinators at the county level. I think we just had a moment of a little bit discussion on that as we were going through the last approvals as well too, to see about those performance measures. What does that look like? How are they across the state? Who's looking into those? So it sounds like we're already on a good path to looking at some of that as well too. We also say that there's a slow adaptation of innovation. CTCs, whether urban or rural, are hesitant to use transportation network companies and more innovative delivery models. But there are some good examples of innovation being applied. Some of those are presented today as well too. But pilots haven't necessarily been leading to more widespread use on this one. So how do we make sure that those successful ones are able to take advantage and maybe share those best practices or best ways that we can do things across the state? Also, we saw that there are urban and rural challenges. That's a tough word for me. Urban and rural areas face different sets of issues, always known. Urban coordinators struggle to meet on-time performance targets with nearly all passenger no-shows occurring in these areas, which is largely due to shorter pickup windows and traffic congestion. We also saw that multi-loading in urban areas is also leading to longer trips for some. What do we do about that? How are we looking more into that? And then in our rural areas, CTCs have limited resources and higher trip costs due to the longer distance traveled. So again, it comes back to those differences in both areas and how do we create some balances in there, and how do we also make sure that it's being addressed appropriately within each area. Next slide, please. So recommendations for framework. Recommendations were developed based on industry best practices to support the vision for a customer-focused transportation disadvantaged program that concentrates on filling gaps while also providing trips that promote self-sufficiency. These recommendations fall under three primary focus areas, which you see there on the screen. One being optimizing structures and resources to increase administrative capacity and produce efficiencies in service delivery. Some ideas include promoting regional partnerships, resource pooling, and evaluating grants and funding opportunities to support our rural areas. Number two was leveraging alternative delivery models, practices, and technology to enhance those services for our TD clients. Innovative partnerships such as on-demand and TNC can reduce travel times and make more direct connections, while mobility management practices reduce cost and provide a customer-focused approach. There are also advancements in technology that can enhance the customer experience for our TD clients. Again, trying to make it a customer-focused as we're coming into this one of how we can best serve. Also enhancing performance management by providing more transparency and accountability to improve the overall delivery model. Some suggestions include updating performance reports, as talked about today, and developing customer service training for agency staff. How do we make that experience one that everybody benefits from and that everybody supports from it and walks away with a positive outcome? These recommendations are intended to provide a framework that supports the vision for a modernized, customer-focused TD program that simplifies administration, optimizes resource, enables innovation, and provides accountability. Next slide, please. So what's next? This report, along with a variety of complementary directions that were contained in that same bill from last session, it was rather comprehensive on this one, which included the new makeup and membership of this commission as we are sitting here today. For that, started our efforts and set a strong foundation for how are we to move the program forward. To continue building on that momentum, the goal for today's presentation is to initiate discussions about potential actions that can be taken to enhance those services. To begin that discussion, outlining some ideas, which I'll walk through quickly in the knowing of time, even though it sounds like the rain may have subsided on this one. But I know we won't be able to answer all the questions today. I just wanted to be able to do a starting point to generate ideas for what we can do so that we can build upon the report and what we see from that report. Next slide, please. So for discussion, as it comes to this one too, standardizing policies could be helpful in establishing more uniformity at a statewide level. And it can be done in a way that allows flexibility for local decision making. So how can we establish minimum criteria as a baseline for determining TD client eligibility? Also, can we create consistency in determining which program will fund a trip? How do we look into that? We've seen that that's an issue. I think we can all agree that exhausting federal funds before spending state dollars, but how do we make that happen? How do we create this system so that we are utilizing those funds in the right flow as it comes down to it? Also, can we set statewide uniform performance standards for timeliness, service quality, things of that nature when it comes to it? How do we gather that information uniformly across the state in order to really see where we're going and where we should be going? Those were a couple of the ideas that came from this one. I don't know if there's any others that would like to discuss questions about those, or if you want me to continue going, Chair, for a couple other ideas and suggestions, and we can come back to discussions another time.
I mean, I think that
I can keep
I think
rolling.
you gave us a lot. Yeah, but we can also, I would love, if you have more suggestions, please keep them coming.
Absolutely. So we'll keep it coming, and this will be, Karen has it for the slides as well too, for continued discussions for what we can do from it. You'll see there on the slide too, partnerships. What can we do with partnerships? Those are important in making sure that our services are efficient and cost effective. There's several new partnership opportunities that we came from the report to be considered. Are there regional or statewide approach to planning and service delivery that can encourage more inter-county partnerships that better meet the TD client needs? Can we facilitate joint procurements to limit barriers for agencies that cannot obtain new technologies? How can we encourage more participations with TNCs or other on-demand providers and utilize mobility management activities using regional structures and partnerships? If we go to the next slide, please. The study also recommends taking a fresh look at funding programs and considering ways to improve training. Some areas to look at might include addressing funding gaps to better support rural agencies by reevaluating our grant programs. I think we've heard a little bit of that today as well. And removing local match requirements in some cases. Is that going to help? Where can we do that? What should those policies look like? Some grants to consider are the state block grants, our trip and equipment, the Shirley Conroy, and as discussed today, the innovative service development grants. What do those look like? Where do they need to go? How can we best utilize those dollars and ensure that we get the services and trips to our customers as they need it? Should the CTD be developing new training programs to help resource-constrained agencies provide better quality training opportunities to their staff? There was some direction in this bill to provide additional training that came to it, but how do we build onto that as well too? How do we make sure that we push that out appropriately, get feedback, see where other gaps there could be that comes into it to, again, enhance that customer service delivery that comes behind it? So some of those include mobility management for trip planning and scheduling, our customer service for client relations, and then also travel training to help shift some paratransit users to fixed route service. Does that make sense when it comes into it? Next slide, please. We also looked at it, again, coming from the BASES report where it comes to it, implementing pilot programs to provide a chance to test new or innovative practices for more widespread adoption. There's several opportunities to create some of these pilot programs. One is to establish regional administration of TD services by creating broader regional boundary or multiple county service areas. Some of these administration activities could test a regional approach to several concepts, such as mobility management activities, including centralized call centers and eligibility screening to reduce the burden for some CTCs while offering more access to TD clients. What could that look like? We could also look into streamlining local planning functions by condensing the number of DOPAs and local coordinating boards to create one regional planning entity. All considerations for when it comes into it. And then offering facility or fleet sharing within a regional boundary to provide additional resources for some rural CTCs. Another approach could be creating a regional or statewide brokerage model, pilot to determine whether it's more efficient or effective for delivering our TD services. Could there be increased consistency, economies of scale, and enhanced accountability through this approach, through that brokerage? Lastly, joint procurements. We talked a little bit of procurements earlier too, always a topic. Between multiple CTCs might be facilitated as a pilot program to determine cost effectiveness and efficiencies and providing broader access to innovative technologies and service delivery models. And if you go to the next slide, in wrapping up the presentation, there's several ways to approach the information gathered in the study. I've read a couple of those today too, again, for discussion purposes, get your mind going into where we could go as this body into that. But it's going to be establishing pilot programs. What does that look like? Does that make sense to come into it? And what could those be to test the innovative technologies and alternative service deliveries, improving performance management by enhancing our performance reports and standards, and then also gathering additional agency data through surveys to determine needs and explore options for resource pooling. I know Gabe and I have talked about this too. This is a great report. It's got great information that comes into it, but like all of our reports, it becomes stale, if you will, as soon as it starts. So we got to continue building on that. What does that look like? When it comes to the funding measure of that, there was discussion or opportunity for additional surveys to our agencies as how does your funding work? And then how do we put all that together to identify the best flow of that and how it works? It's quite a web, but I do think that we can untangle that when it comes to it, but that's going to take some additional work and surveys from this line. So that's what we were talking about from this one, and then updating some of our policies as we've talked today. How do we look at those? How do we make sure that our policies are consistent with the needs of the state? And how do we ensure that our clients are served back through those policies? Again, all opportunities that we can continue to explore further, and I hope we will do as a body as we sit here today. So next slide, please. I thank you for the opportunity to present the study and discuss this path forward. As you know, we have countless individuals who rely on these services, and we are excited to elevate those services as best we can and make sure that that is a customer-focused service that comes into it. I know together we'll make those improvements, and I'm excited to do that with all of you at the table today and see where we can go further from here. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Very nice presentation. Commissioners, are there any questions about this report?
This is Robert Dewell. So
Yes, sir.
lot of information,
Yeah.
a lot of recommendations. Now you started talking about some conversations around the table here. Curious if, when did those conversations take place in terms of actually trying to, get to some resolutions behind some of those areas?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think maybe later on as well too, as we have open discussion when it comes to it, what is it that we as a body would like to look at moving forward? A recommendation of the chair as well too, of what could come onto the next agenda items or to the next meetings to come to that, and we can look at it. Approaching those and some of those attainable bites, if you will, as to what is a near-term solution, and then how does that build upon the next, knowing what we want our end goal to be, and focus on that. So yes, a lot of information, a lot of need to digest what was thrown out there as well too for that. So happy to talk more when it comes to that one too, and happy to have a discussion with the group now or whenever we need to facilitate maybe another discussion as it comes to that.
Yeah, I was just curious if part of the plan is to maybe push some of this stuff into either some subcommittees or working groups and things of that nature. Things that may not be as conducive for the full body. Yeah.
Commissioner, I agree. I think that would be a good opportunity should the chair also agree to maybe have some of those working groups come together for it.
Yes, I think that's a wonderful idea. I think initially we need to understand the information that we have too. So my question, Vice Chair, is what was any of the data that we currently have access to contemplated, looked at, and was it reported on? Because I do think that that's an area that we, at least, in my short time here, that I have struggled with, is that there isn't a lot of feedback, particularly from the end users and the people that we need that we are serving. I don't see a lot of satisfaction surveys. Did what happened? I think we took a great step in the adverse incident reporting, but we still haven't really even seen what that looks like yet. So was that part of this report? Did they pull any and everything, particularly from the local entities, on what happens and what service looks like?
So on this report, it was very specific for the legislature as to what we were asked to look at and look forward to. A lot of that was timeliness of service, how it came into service, who's being served, the breakdowns of it, how do we look into new technologies, what would that look like? It was a lengthy list, but a good list as to what we need to look into. On that list, however, it was not necessarily looking at satisfaction surveys when it came into it. That was not a part of the scope of this report. But that's why I also think that entire legislation was complementary to one another, because it did create the adverse incident report as well too, which all of this information coming together helps us get that broader picture of what's going on. And it's how do we pull all those pieces together and look at what we're seeing from both to really build up that foundation of this program and how do we make it better to come along with it. So yes, a great deal of information in it, just not necessarily for the satisfaction of it, but I think we can pull that together as we start receiving in these adverse incidents reports as well too. And also as we do the training. Yep.
Sorry, satisfaction maybe isn't the right word exactly, but just feedback from the users, right? Just what their experience is. Are they happy with it? Are they getting what they need? I think that's important. I also, you mentioned the multiple funding sources and those being options. I think that's also, for me, a priority, because we know then if we can free up or move around different, if somebody that we're serving can actually be served from a different source of funding, potentially, that frees up more dollars for individuals that we're maybe not meeting the needs of at this point. So that's another high priority topic, and look and maybe could use this board's kind of direction on, I think.
Here, I do think one thing we could do, building upon your comments of this, was we are looking into who is federally required to do certain programs, who has the standards from that one. I think that's something with this direction as well too, that we could take on either as
carrying through it and send out some surveys to see where is that coming from? Who is required to do it and required to have it sit within their agency? And how does that flow through? And then figuring out how those overlap into one another, where we can find maybe some efficiencies behind that as well too, of both oversight and organization of it as well. So that is something that if you would be amenable to that, we would like to maybe propose looking into that and doing a survey of our agencies to say, why do you do this program? Are you required to do this program? How does it pull down from this program? And then how we can match those eligibility requirements across it too, as we've already seen that there's multiple dual eligibility that comes to it. So then how does that customer know who to go to first? And then how does that, when you come to that one customer, know who to fund it first? Who is truly the funding of last resort on this one? And how do we make sure that those are flowed appropriately down into it?
And what kind of solutions can we come up with that it's more streamlined for the writers? So they don't have to figure out, do I call this person or do I call this person?
Yes, and then even for our staff, of when they call us and then they called others, of who do you call and not call into those different.
Sort of the no wrong door approach, right? If there are a lot of these, there can be overlap and duplicative services, and that's what we also want to try to get away from, right?
Well, and prioritizing the funding source too, Commissioner Farren. I think you've brought this up in previous meetings, I'm pretty sure too, just that sometimes an entity could do it or is responsible for that, but that's not the funding source they're going to necessarily. And so maybe, I don't know if that's that may end up being a tool or a piece of technology that we could offer, or that we could mandate use of, so that that funding prioritization goes through at time of service. And so we could look at, and this is one of many things, but I think the more dollars we can identify, the more service we can provide.
So starting in that vein, if it'd be all right with you too, I think I would move to direct CTD staff to maybe, and we'll work with it too from FDOT, about putting together that type of survey of how we can start getting that information rolling and putting it together, and then hopefully bring that back at the next meeting.
I'm in full support of that. I would also like, though, to add to, I think you've said this, but I want to make sure I'm very clear. I would like to add all available fund, not just what, they are using, but identification of other ones that they could be using, knowing the population that we're serving, and, other sources that maybe aren't, 1A is the go-to, but could be. So I'd like to know where this in totality could all live.
Perfect.
All
We'll take
right.
that on as a direction too, and work with staff in developing that, of how we can come together, and happy to help report that back as well too. Yes.
Thank you, Vice Chair, for volunteering for that. We appreciate that. Okay. Are there any other questions for Vice Chair Smith?
This is Samantha Barron again. Have we thought about, and I know we've talked about it before, Commissioner Hatch used to talk about it a lot, just like the population that we're serving, right? What is the highest need that they have? I think you hear a lot of how do we get to work, right? And so is there a way to look at those, like in addition to making sure we're utilizing and drawing down the dollars from the right place and, expending it as judiciously as possible, are we spending it on the right things too, right? So is it make more sense to help from a get to work perspective, if that's like the highest use of need that the population needs as well?
Yeah, and I do think we'll want to engage stakeholders from different areas of the state, because as you know, different parts of the state, you have different kind of challenges with your transportation.
I think that's important, but I do think these are tangential, right? Like they're all related in that if we're, if it's a person going to a medical appointment, but the Medicaid or Medicare funds that, then that would free up more dollars potentially for people going to work, which may or may not have a lot of funding sources to it. So I do think what they're using it for is important for sure, Commissioner Fair, because that's how you would eventually overlay these two things. But I also think what is not being serviced is also important in that regard. Like, do we have a list of people who would like to go to a job, but we don't have the dollars there to do that? You know, like I kind of want to know that too. And I don't know that we have that, but if we could, that would be great.
This is Commissioner Carter. I just kind of want to throw in there, this group obviously very heavily focused on the disadvantage as far as the developmental disability aspect, but we do work with our seniors too. And while the majority of them are not necessarily looking to go to work, there are some. But a lot of what I have found in past roles and in current roles outside of the commission is that a lot of times there are services available to seniors through like their insurance, not just Medicaid or Medicare. Things that are required that sometimes get pushed off onto other payees. So I think that even in the disability realm for our other clients as well, not just seniors, if you look at worth looking into all of that and coming up to that determination of who pays first, because they are required, and there's some other stuff going around that will make them even more required to do these things. So just throwing it out there that as far as the senior population goes, there should be a lot more or a greater avenue for people to go down to get services paid for than what we're currently seeing.
This is Robert Doyle. So folks probably know this, but within the VR and blind services world, we can pay for transportation particularly related to employment initially in terms of when they're preparing for employment. Once they get to a place of being employed, then at some point we're expecting that individual to take over their own expenses on that side. But there are certain rules on the federal level as well. As I know we're talking about, can you get feds to pay first, depending on the funding source, you know, where certain programs are the payer of last resort. And I think about, for example, when we're drawing down dollars, feds want us to spend any program income or any dollars we get in first before we draw down those other federal dollars. So understanding that when you're looking at the hierarchies. And then again, I'm still pretty new to this commission, but just understanding that within the local areas, not everybody's providing the same type of service to the same populations. And so I think that creates more complexities around trying to figure out what you're doing regionally or within those local areas and statewide as well when you're looking at their coordination. So it just seems like it makes it even more complex to try to map it all out. But I was thinking about how do you take and look at all of the, like you said, varied funding sources and put them on the map. And can you pay for this? Can you pay for that? Can you pay for that? You know, are there certain rules that says who's first? And that might be a way to begin to organize some of those things. And at the same time, looking at within that map, which of these providers are providing that service as opposed to not, and may help identify where those gaps may be. But again, it sounds like something to put in a computer. See if we can spit out some answers for them.
This is Commissioner. And I believe what you're referring to on the federal side is the supportive services side. So any service that is available to help a participant of a program participate in that program and be successful. But once you're in it, then it's okay, how are you doing it? And to speak to your computer, programming, it would very much be you have to ask a certain line of questions so that way it can narrow down where you're actually supposed to be based on those questions. That if it's not universal, we're going to have stuff all over the place again.
And I think that's part of it, of what we saw in this one too. This is Commissioner Smith, of pulling it together, realizing it is a unique and complex system that comes to various ways and funds that are coming in and about it. How do we learn more from that then too? It's finding out the various streams, making that more of a cohesive environment of what it is, who goes where, and then can we create a statewide consistency of asking questions so that it's more customer focused again to come into it. These are the questions to ask to know where to go when. It's not going to be a quick fix or a quick solution that comes behind us by any means, but we need to start, I think, looking at those as to what it is and how does yours work? How does yours work? How does it come together? And then start advocating too for if there's ways to fill those gaps or make those changes or create more of a synergy behind those programs at both the federal and state level that comes behind it too. But it's going to be, and I think maybe you volunteered here too for your spreadsheet. You're a very, but, and that's what it takes though, to be able to really parse through that data to say, what do we need to know? And we then display that to an output. All of this work best to have a customer focused, customer friendly, customer centered, and making sure that all those trips, like you said, it's different in different regions. The elderly have other resources that are a higher priority to them, to the disadvantaged, to the developmental. All of those have their own priorities, if you will, within those. So how do we make sure that each priority is being met within all of those systems that come to it?
It's not simple, but it's process mapping. And so we would process map the experience for all sorts of individuals. And there's actually some pretty significant developments within, the AI tools that could help with, once you have all of this data and all of the allowable funding sources and the types of people and all of the things put in, you could utilize potentially a tool to go through, like an eligibility tool, essentially, that they could help on sides.
I think Commissioner Tellez has her hand up.
Hello, everyone. I'm sorry I can't be there with you. For those who don't know me, I've been here since about 2016. And it sounds like, as I look at the agenda, this definitely sounds like whoever suggested a subcommittee, because the discussion we're having right now fits within a subcommittee to bring back information to the board. And considering the agenda that we have today, would that be a suggestion or recommendation?
I think that's a great suggestion. Who do we need to establish a subcommittee? I'm assuming it needs to be some of the commissioners, but I know that we also are asking staff to go back and start pulling some of this, but
Yeah, I think the subcommittee would be a great place, because I'm listening to the conversation. You guys have great ideas, and the staff can assist you in whatever your suggestions may be. But it sounds like this is huge.
yeah,
Huge.
no, it is.
But it's wonderful. I mean, it's great, but it's a lot of information. And I think it would, if we can get some, at least even a smaller subcommittee together, that might be more productive.
So Karen, how do we establish that through, whatever governance we're supposed to stay within? Because I also know we have sunshine rules. So I want to make sure we stay within those two.
True. I think that, and we can thank volunteers, whoever wants to be on that workforce, that task force. If it consists of commissioners, we'll need to make sure we advertise any of their meetings in the administrative register. So at least give me a 2 weeks notice before we decide on when we're going to be meeting. But other than that, I think that's where we're at. Michelle, do you have any limitations?
No, I mean, if any of the commissioners, if they actually find themselves more than two, then yeah, you would have to notice it. Or if they're just going to channel information to the staff directly, and the staff can compile, and then perhaps they can set a designated time to review the compilation. I mean, I'm sure they'll need an initial meeting, subcommittee meeting, but the staff, maybe they can communicate with the staff directly to avoid having to meet very frequently. I know everyone's schedules are pretty thin, so that's just a consideration.
So do we want to first have staff start pulling some of this stuff, and then maybe at the next meeting you can present at least what you found, and then we can establish a more specified subcommittee? Because I think a lot of people would be signing up for something they don't know what they're signing up for at this exact moment. But I think if we start pulling together some of the, what we have and what we need, like a gap analysis.
But I think that's what the subcommittee does. I mean, because right now, how will we direct the staff? Who would direct the staff? What would we be directing them to do? It just seems very broad right now.
Can I suggest that maybe staff works with, maybe initially with DOT, to start putting some of that information together? I think at the national level, there are some efforts that have kind of already identified some of those funding sources, so that might be a good place to start with. And we could either bring it back to the commission or share it prior to our next commission meeting as we prepare.
I'm open to any and all. What is the feeling of the group?
That sounds good, Karen.
Does that sound okay?
Give head nods around the table here in person.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Well, thank you. So are there any other questions for Vice Chair Smith? All right, next I wanted to discuss the commission's compliance with Governor DeSantis's recommendation. So I will go ahead and kick off this segment of the meeting here. I think we've touched on a lot of this, but I think all of us have seen the efforts and initiatives and the need to identify efficiencies within government. And so I wanted to bring this topic up to the commission to make sure that we were identifying efficiencies within ourselves. And so I do think that not only the legislation last year, but this report and the initial work we are performing here will help identify some of those. So the big one for me was, kind of the funding sources. So I'm really excited that we will have some movement in that. But I also wanted to open it up to the other commissioners to see if they themselves had ideas or ideas for efficiencies that they would like to see some movement on, get some more information on, so that we could bring those to the group and really make this, a lean, mean commission machine is my vision here. So I open that up now for comment, questions, ideas to the other commissioners.
This is Commissioner Carter. I think that with some of the plans we have in place, going over and coming up with this reporting mechanism, who pays first, some of the other reporting mechanisms that we've discussed today, that would be the first step in really finding our efficiencies. Because we have to have a better overall picture of what's happening with each program. So it's just my opinion. I think we're kind of already on that track to do that. And then once we get into a couple different, I don't want to say sessions, but as soon as we get into some of the stuff that we're working on, I think that's when those ideas will probably start flowing. Okay, well, this is where we can make a change, or this is where we can do that to improve it, make it more efficient, make it more cost effective, provide better services, and all the things that we're working to do. So that's what I have.
I agree. You did, Vice Chair Smith, bring up a very interesting part of the report, though, that I really would like to focus on making sure that's never part of our report ever again, which was the fear of innovation. And so that is something, too, that I would like to focus on, and making sure that we do not have either within this commission or within the groups that we work with to have a fear of innovation, because I think that will limit our finding and use of efficiencies if we have a fear of innovation. So that is my other goal for as we move forward into the a more efficient, or as efficient as we can be, commission. I want to make sure that we eliminate that fear.
Agreed.
Okay. Any other comments?
Yes, Commissioner Micah.
Go ahead, Commissioner Micah.
I liked to kind of dovetail into the prior report, I think focusing on regionalization, kind of cutting down on the number of layers, and especially in our part of the state where we have a combination of urban and rural interface. I think there may be some economies of scale there, and looking at how we can maybe get a little more efficient.
I think that's a great suggestion. Okay. All right, so I think, Karen, you will be discussing the next several agenda items. Do you want me to just name them all off, or do you want to go into them individually?
I can go, yeah, I can go over each one of them individually, just briefly.
Okay.
We're getting to like almost 5 o'clock. I can't believe the time's flying. Briefly, in your package, you'll see the allocation for the trip and equipment grant program. That is, you'll also see a comparison chart in there with what was distributed last year versus what's being proposed to distribute this year. Remember, the trip equipment grant is based on a formula that's in our rule that was changed not too long ago, back in, I think it's 2021. So we're seeing some impacts of that as we're going into our 5th year in our funding, using this different funding formula. It is for the provision of services. We reimburse CTCs for that. They're required to provide a 10% match to their grant. And they submit invoices monthly, and we reimburse them each month once they submit those correct invoices to us. This year, I think our total, the 25-26, we proposed $52 million for the trip and equipment grant program. Okay. The next, are there any questions related to the trip equipment grant? No. The next one is the planning grant. And again, that one is based on a funding formula and our rules. All the planning agencies, just like the CTCs, all the counties get an allocation for both the trip equipment and the planning grant funding. This past 25-26, we are proposing a little over $2 million for that. The cap was set back in, I think it's 2002. Each year the cap may be adjusted based on the percentage of increase in state employees. You see increase in legislation. Since our allocations are done a year after the budget is approved, this year's planning grant is adjusted by 3% increase. Okay. The Shirley Conroy Grant Assistance Program, that is a competitive opportunity for CTCs to apply for funding for capital equipment. DOT transfers $1.4 million over to our trust fund. CTCs have to apply for the funding. They have to tell us what type of equipment they want to propose purchasing. They need to demonstrate that they got at least 3 quotes, depending upon the price of the item. And they also have to go through possibly some competitive procurement in getting, if it's over like, I think it was at 35,000 now. Yes, they have to demonstrate they've done that. Oftentimes they buy vehicles through the DOT vehicle procurement process, so they don't have to do a procurement for the vehicle. They can buy it through the DOT program for those larger items. We have traditionally waived the match in some of the rural counties upon their request. So that means we've provided 100% funding for our equipment, be it vehicles, software, computers, tablets, that type of thing. We don't buy office supplies, and we don't purchase or fund any capital investments or any improvements to facilities. We leave that to DOT. In the past, we have had subcommittee members when we had advisors on the commission. Those agency representatives were on our subcommittee to help review the applications and make the recommendations. But since the commission membership has changed, we don't have those members. So staff would like to review those applications and come back at our June meeting with the recommendations for you all to consider for the award. If that be okay with you guys. Same thing with the Innovation Service Development Grant. Right now, we have $3 million in our budget. My understanding is that in the governor's budget, they recommended a $3 million for the ISD program. So we've moved forward. Both of these have been Both of the grant application packages have been distributed. We're going to be receiving applications based on knowing we're getting a 3 million for the ISD program. Unless that changes, we will make adjustments to our recommendations. I have to play that out as the session goes through. It doesn't end until May 2nd. So, and I think the applications are due on that one, May the 12th. We'll have an idea, at least what's in the budget, what we can consider awarding. Like you've heard the speakers earlier today, the innovation grants, we provide funding for all sorts of different ideas and projects. We've worked with the Treasure Coast on the IDD projects. We've got some other programs where we're working with TNCs. The CTCs are working with TNCs to kind of expand those resources that are available. And then there's some that are actually looking at doing, they've been doing regional mobility where they have been crossing lines, and they've all been really successful. Part of the ISD is that we will consider current year funding projects first and then anything new after that. And I think with some of the conversation earlier today was about the fact that the commission had voted a couple of years ago, well, I guess it's last year, to limit the funding projects to 4 years. So like we had heard earlier today, they will be ending some of those. One of those projects will be ending June 30th of this year, unless we change that practice.
Can you remind me, is that 4-year limitation, is that in rule?
No, it's not in rule or statute. It was a decision the commission had made at the December, I think it was a December 2023 commission meeting. The thought was innovation, the intent behind it was innovation is innovation. How long is a project innovative? And then also the intent was, as we provide that seed money to test projects, it was in hopes that as those projects became successful, the CTCs would find funding locally to continue those type of services and make it a part of their day-to-day operation. 4 years might not be enough time. It may be, we might need to consider longer, or they may need to consider finding other funding sources to continue those type of successful projects. You would think some of those projects could be funded with our trip equipment grant funding as a continued level of service, but our trip equipment grant funding hasn't increased in many years either. And it kind of varies from year to year. So that might be something else we might want to look at in the future. If we could get more funding in that grant cycle or in that grant program, that could maybe help support some of those services in the future. Could be demonstrated as possibly as an unmet need if the program, if the ISD grant ends.
I guess for me, it is definitely a balance, right? When is innovation, like, at what point is it innovative enough to kind of carry itself? I definitely think that's a valid question, but I also think that potentially having a 4-year, any number, right, could also stifle the innovation too, right? And so I want to make sure that we're balancing that. And if these innovation grants are going to things that we're seeing great success from, how does that balance with what's currently been done just through the other funding models that are just sort of formulaic, right? And so how do we make sure that we're balancing between the two appropriately to get the best ROI for the program?
Yeah, we need to find a way to balance those two.
So right now, those, and this is Commissioner Smith, those applications are live to be able to commit to, or for the innovation for the grants? You said they closed May 12th?
Yes, the applications, the grant manuals and the applications are out right now for people to start working on their proposals. We had an ISD webinar last week where we provided some technical assistance and just some guidance on how to complete them, what we were looking for in the applications. So
as we continue with the conversations of this as well too, and knowing that that's open for it, and right now it's a policy of the commission to have the 4-year on. Is there anything that prohibits someone who would be coming up with that 4-year from applying? Are they able to apply, and then as this body decides or maybe discusses further as to any changes, are they able to apply for that now?
I think anybody's able to apply for anything. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And will the
Is part of the application process, Karen, is part of the application process, do they have to identify, what funding they will utilize or move to if it's successful?
What funding?
So there's a separate application for.
There's a separate application for each, yes, for each program.
Right, but when so for the innovation grant in particular, particularly if we have a 4-year or not mandated, but there was a initially contemplated 4-year timeline. Are we having individuals when they're applying for this or entities that are applying for this identify how they would move off of this funding in 4 years and onto something else, or what the plan for
Their glide path.
graduating past innovation? Yeah. Or
Sustainability.
is that not part of the application? Yes.
Yes. We asked them to identify that, and oftentimes the response is that the project would not be sustainable without this funding. I think sometimes it's difficult for them to identify local funding to continue the services, and like what we just spoke of with all the different funding sources, even though it's for individuals, it's difficult to earmark particular additional funding or grants to continue those type of services.
This is Sherry. I just wanted to go back to Commissioner Smith's question about whether they are allowed to apply. They are allowed to apply, but in the manual, it specifically states that once you've had it for 4 years, that's all you're eligible for. So whether or not they would take that initiative to reapply when that's in there, like for the case of the Advantage Ride program. So that's some different guidance that while you want to consider or reconsider, we can definitely put something out again, if that's the desire of the board members.
And I take it that the board would need to give some indication today if we're willing to consider things beyond the 4 years so that folks would know to do that. So.
This is Commissioner Carter. I think it's important to consider. I know why I was a big proponent of why we did what we did. But let's say we do not have a bunch of new people applying for that grant, and that money has nowhere to go anyways. So if we do not have something that is more innovative in a different area that could bring services on, or we haven't, I think that it is important that we say, go ahead and apply. It's not guaranteed funding, but it gives us a little flexibility in the long run.
Okay. Well, I think
Respectfully, I am not, I don't think that we should be spending money to spend the money, but I am open to past 4 years, I think it's time, but I would like question of how are you going to fund this past whatever time, past the innovative part. What is the plan for that? And that has to be like a mandatory question. And if it's a non-answer, I think that could make your application invalid.
This is Commissioner Micah. I want to echo that. Specifically from our experience at the local level, I mean, this has been a very this is a service that's in demand, and to your point, I think at what point do you move from development to sustainment, and then at what level should there be local skin in the game to continue to sustain that? I agree. If you continue to provide the funding and there's no incentive to kind of wean yourself off of it, I just, from personal experience, I don't know that many local governments would do that. So I think maybe looking at some type of sustainment, and then is there a way, but kind of in line with the conversation about looking at multiple funding sources, is there a way that maybe you can reduce expenditures or budgeted expenditures in another line item, if you will, or another revenue source, but be required to then transfer that into this sustainment program as maybe, let's say, the state portion, with a requirement for there to be some type of local match to be eligible. And I'm not sure how we go about doing that, but I think the benefit of that also, from an operator's perspective, I see this as it creates flexibility for the customer. It's on demand when they want to go. It transitions more of this over to the private sector versus the public sector over the long term. And I think all of that is good at the end of the day. So, but I think if you continue to provide a source and there's no requirement for local commitment. It doesn't matter whether it's 4 years, 8 years, or 12 years. Government's going to continue to have their head in the trough to get the money from the the source of least resistance. So.
I think that's a good point. And I don't remember, we talked about this a while ago, might have been my first meeting. What's the pathway for someone who's received the innovation grant to then potentially roll up into any of the other grants? Like, is there a way that within our structure that we could go from being the innovative grant to receiving?
Yeah, or even the portion of the formula.
Right, exactly. Sorry, yeah, formula, exactly.
They're always welcome to use the current trip equipment grant funding for this service, but that would take away from trips that are being funded under the trip equipment grant. So we're boxed in as far as limited funding. They could roll into the trip equipment, but they don't have any more additional funds in that. If we move funds from the ISD grant program into the trip equipment to continue that, then that takes away from the money that's available in the ISD grant. And that money comes to us through advice. It's not a reoccurring line item.
The innovation.
Right.
The
So
innovation.
it's exercise of prioritization and, identifying funds. I think that's even more relevant.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I do.
Thank you, Chair.
I do know that, like we've heard from speakers today, the Treasure Coast project will end June 30th of this year. So I think that was some of the concern that we were hearing today. Not sure we have 3 months.
Let's give the guidance then to remove that the whatever the requirement of the 4-year component within the materials. Let's strike that and let everybody know that that's no longer, you still need to apply, but there's not a 4-year limitation, but there's now a mandate, and you need to identify, and it's not, and not to say that that plan won't change either, but you need to have a plan to move this from innovation into sustainability and what that will look like.
Are you making that form of a motion?
I guess I'm making that, yes, I move to do.
Commissioner Ferry will second.
So let's take a vote then. If we're not breaking any rules, are we? I know the general counsel is helpful in this space. We're doing this right?
You are fine. You are fine. It takes me a minute for this to come back to camera.
Perfect. So all in favor, please say aye. Oh wait, we didn't get it. Yeah, we got a first motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Right. All opposed?
Commissioner Micah votes no.
So noted.
So will the potential applicants know their grant status before June 30th?
Yes. Oh, yes, depending upon when you all meet.
Which will be sometime.
No, June before the 16th.
Okay, I wanted to highlight that because it sounds like a lot of individuals will need to have a backup plan in the event.
So are we talking about speakers that we are the public comment we had? Individuals?
Yes.
What was
Yes,
the
ma'am.
plan? Dan, this wasn't even on the agenda as a voting item.
It was not on the agenda. It was part of the grant program presentation.
Okay, so we've at least given an option at this point.
Yes.
For the individual who, correct?
My understanding is anybody's eligible to apply. we will advise everybody, all the CTCs, that it's open for them to apply, that the 4-year limitation by the commission's vote has been removed,
Suspended.
been suspended.
Like suspended.
Like suspended, okay? Suspended. And that they should apply. Keep in mind that current projects will be given first consideration. And we are limited to $3 million. This year, we awarded all but $5 at that.
And if I may, Madam Chair, I think my only question or concern of going to a full suspension, it's again, you've got that whole idea that current projects get priority. And if you've got some new innovation coming up and those kind of things, obviously creating some parameters that give other funding opportunities a chance to be able to actually compete and maybe
Yes. Well, you've given me a
deprioritize
new wrinkle.
those
I
for
was
that.
unaware of the, I didn't know we had a prioritization of current projects in this, so I think maybe we need to suspend that component as well. So current projects are not given first priority in an attempt
Chair.
to kind of,
So if I may, Madam Chair, I would just like for it to be for the statement to be clarified as to what the commission's activity or action is, because there's been some back and forth and now it may be a little confusing for this record.
yeah, great. Okay, so Karen, help me out here. We want to give people the option to reapply, even if they are at their 4-year mark. But we also, or at least I would like to also make a component of the application that's mandatory be that you have to identify how you will move from innovation to sustainability. But again, this is me. I do not want to mandate us to prioritize ongoing projects if we're going to suspend the ones that are 4 years, because I'm assuming there is a contingent of there's a contingent of people out there who knew that some of those were, the 4-year time was part of this, and they would no longer be in consideration of those projects. So maybe they were hoping that this would be the year for their project. I do not know. So I don't want to limit that either. So what would be the suggestion on how we accomplish all 3 of those, if that is in fact the will of the group as well?
And if I may, and to clarify, if this will require language change to an actual application that has already been dispersed.
We will need to provide clarification to the application grant manual that's already been sent out. Yes. What we can do is we can definitely send out an additional email to everyone advising them of the commission's actions.
And the timeliness of that information, how and by what means will it be shared? I know you said an email, but I don't want there to be any, I'm just recommending that the commission consider if there will be any notice issues that we may need to be careful about. I mean, everything, of course, is transparent with full disclosure, and this discussion at this public meeting is fine, technically correct, but big picture considered, I just wanted there not to be any type of confusion. So if it's going to fall on staff to make sure that this is equitably distributed, I mean, if the application process is not fully in effect, all of these things just need to be very clearly communicated because it wasn't technically printed on the agenda. It was a part of the report given by staff.
Karen, how long has that application been out? When was that released or published? For the applications, I should say.
We emailed those out on March the 17th.
Okay. We're not too far in then. And when are they due?
May the 12th.
And I feel like if this is the will of the group, that is sufficient notice, but
and
that up to everyone to decide.
And Madam Chair, if I may interject, if there's going to be, and I don't know if this will be arguably considered a material change, that, again, it would fall severely in the center of staff to make it known that the previous application is being replaced by, and there is not a consideration of a shortened application period because of a change, which may or not be deemed material, but those are the types of questions that could arise. Did not know about the application having gone out March 17th. It is March 31st. It's literally just 2 weeks. But again, I don't know the number of individuals that will be impacted. And if, I don't want anything to fall back on the commission for consideration. If there's been considered any type of a period that was been shortened or a requirement that was not otherwise known, because I guess his application has been in place, worded the way it is. I'm pretty sure Ms. Somerset for years.
Well, the 4-year limitation has been in the application since the 2021 grant cycle,
23.
I'm sorry, 2023 grant cycle.
So it was
Okay.
actually in the application package for this.
For this, for 24, 25. Commission voted on it December of 23. The limitation was actually applied only in this year's grant cycle for 24, 25. And I think the only party that it could affect would be the Treasure Coast project, the project that the Senior Resource Association has spoke of earlier today. Their project is the only one that, based on that 4-year time limit, would be timed out at the end of June of this year and would not be eligible under the current practices and would not be eligible to reapply. Everybody else is still, any of the other projects are still eligible to reapply, to be considered, in addition to any new projects.
That is a
Madam
series.
Chair.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, I mean, I think what we're looking to do is we're looking for some flexibility. We're looking to suspend the rule to allow anybody to apply. But we're also indicating that projects that have reached a 4-year life cycle, whatever we want to call it, that they may not receive the priority over. So they may or they may not. We just want to be able to consider those applications, but we don't necessarily want to put them in front of everybody else that's there as well. So I think that's what we're ultimately trying to do. And so whether we go back and look at our initial motion, restate it, or just clarify what the action is, we're suspending the rule, allowing anyone to apply, and then also indicating that folks that have reached a 4-year cycle may not receive priority over others. They may or may not receive priority over those other projects. And then that way it gives us the opportunity to review and consider any that come in, but it also allows us not to say, okay, you've been doing this for 4 years, so you automatically get it over right here. It gives us the flexibility we're looking for.
And to further clarify that, Commissioner Smith, also with what is going to be the sustainability behind that? How is there a plan to come into sustaining behind with consideration?
So do we also ask for any projects that have reached a 4-year that they include a sustainability plan in their application?
I would still like the sustainability. I would like the sustainability.
Okay.
Yeah, because how, that I'm assuming we have other ones that will hit their 4-year mark next year. And
Correct.
so what are we, so they now, have 1 year to identify ways to move this from innovation into sustainability. So I would still like to add that part as a mandatory answer.
So my understanding, we are suspending the 4-year limitation and we're suspending the prioritization of current year projects. And
we're only suspending the prioritization of projects that have met their 4-year timeline.
Okay.
The other ones because I don't want to change the rules of the game on people halfway through the game.
You can't do, thank you.
Okay. And the ones that have reached,
the one that has met the 4-year, all of them need to have the plan of how you move off of the innovation funding.
We will send that out email to, go ahead, Michelle.
I was going to say, if I may, it will be incumbent upon staff to absolutely communicate the information for all affected parties as soon as possible.
Yes. Send an email out and we'll also put an update on our webpage.
And can we also make a note to discuss next year's application process prior to it being released?
Yes. You definitely do that.
Okay. We done all of the things the right way here? Are we good to move on?
Yes, ma'am, I think we are.
All right,
Okay.
commissioners, are there any additional questions for Ms. Somerset?
I'm sorry again, it's Ms. Munson, just to clarify. By the time these applications are due, we would have the commission will not have met before the due date of these applications. Am I correct in understanding that? Should staff run into any questions or problems? I just wanted to note for the record in public meetings sake that, listen, if we need to reconvene earlier than not, that of course we should do so.
Understood. Director Somerset, I will lean on you then to communicate that to me and the other commissioners if that is necessary.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you.
All right.
All right. We all clear? Does everybody know everything they need? Okay, perfect. All right. So this is now the opportunity for commissioners to provide updates about their programs or anything they may want to share.
I'm sorry, Chair, do you want me to discuss adverse incidences? Are you guys okay with that in the agenda?
Yes, sorry. No,
That's okay.
No, let's please go back to that. Sorry, I didn't realize we missed that. Will you please talk about the reports we've received at this point?
Yes, ma'am, we've only received 2 to date. But remember that they're due quarterly. And so this first quarter is January through March, and we have until April the 31st to receive those incidences reports. As we get those, we will start going through them and put them in some type of a format to provide a summary of the incident, maybe to set it up in some type of a category, based on categories, depending upon what we're receiving. And be able to provide that report back to you all at the June commission meeting. But as of today, we've
like a
already
very
received.
high level review of the 2 or any of them, I want to make sure they're not something that needs to be immediately addressed.
Okay, certainly. The 2 that we received, one was in regards to the passenger flipping out of its motorized wheelchair, and they were trying to steer themselves into the wheelchair place on the vehicle. The driver wasn't able to pick the passenger back up and put them in their chair, so they called EMS. EMS came to the scene and assisted the passenger back into the wheelchair, and the passenger asked to be taken on to their final destination. Oftentimes, passengers don't like to be belted into their own wheelchairs, and unfortunately, drivers cannot require that of them prior to being able to be transported. Once they're in the wheelchair spot, then the driver is able to secure the wheelchair and secure the passenger with the lap belt and the cross the chest belt. But until then, they're in their wheelchair kind of on their own. And so that was kind of an unavoidable situation. The other incident was the vehicle got hit by, see which was this. They had dropped the passenger side, where the driver was about to drop off 2 passengers. But a pickup truck hit the passenger side of the vehicle. So again, it was not anything that the driver could have done, but that someone else had hit their vehicle while they were delivering those passengers. I believe that all the passengers were okay and they were continued to be transported to their destinations, but they were wanting to report that since passengers were aboard the vehicle.
Okay. Thank you,
All
Karen.
right. Yes.
Just have a simple question if I can.
Yeah.
So I'm seeing it's, is it speak to trying to help reduce the ability to identify who the person is? When you say it's,
Yes.
Yeah.
Based on guidance, we tried to not identify passengers or drivers, just to kind of keep it a higher level and to focus on the incident versus the persons. It's gonna be a little challenging, to make sure we don't get duplicate reports, that we don't get updates to those reports. So we'll try to keep up with that. I think it becomes more of a concern when we identify passenger's name and they're in a wheelchair, then you kind of reveal some, identifiable information. Yeah. Okay. Everybody good with that one?
Thank you,
Okay.
Karen.
All right, last one
Continue
is
on.
just my,
Yeah, so those are both good. So is that,
yes. All right,
okay,
just
go ahead.
briefly on the executive director report. Going along with what we talked about earlier, we are working on a survey to get trip priorities and eligibility information from the CTCs using our trust fund monies. And we'll be able to provide a report back to the commission on that outcome at our next meeting. Close the commission's budget. You'll see 97% of our funding is spent on services. 3%, a little less than 3% is percent. It's spent on administrative expenses to support the program. Some legislative bills have been monitoring during session one in particular. Does talk a little bit about 427.02. It deals more with TNCs than it does the commission or the program per se, but it does say that TNCs are not a part of the public transit services. So when trips are provided through that, TNCs don't have to necessarily comply with any of the DOT requirements, that they are a technology-based service provider only. It does say that the transportation service providers need to provide training to their drivers in regards to transporting persons with disability, providing paratransit services for persons with disability. And we'll continue to work with APD on identifying those training requirements and resources. We work with them. Our quality assurance program this year, all 67 counties can be reviewed. In the past, we've done half the state one year, and then we'll do the other half the next year. This year, we're focusing on grant compliance with our third-party contractor. So it should be much smoother. We will, again, like we spoke earlier, we'll be talking about more program compliance review. Staff will be working on that. We'll be bringing that back to the commission for discussion. This year, I think we've done about 8 counties so far. We've got the rest that'll be moving along pretty quickly through June, until June. Like I said earlier, we've done ISD technical assistance webinar last week, Thursday. We had about 38 participants and it went really well. A lot of good information and feedback. Commission staff participated in the rodeo a couple of months ago. That was a really good opportunity to meet with the drivers, and they go through this rodeo where they test their skills and their knowledge of services. DOT supports, they pretty much put that on, and it's been a real good opportunity to listen to them, to support them, see how things go. You always network with the drivers. That's the backbone of the program. Wouldn't be here without them. We've got an upcoming professional development workshop. Again, DOT puts it on along with the Center for University of Transportation Research Cutter, and we'll be providing 2 sessions at that workshop. And when do you guys want to meet again in June? If not sooner, because we struggled trying to get to March 31st, in this first quarter of the year. So we have the June commission meeting will be in the last quarter of this fiscal year. We were looking at possibly the week of June 16th. Maybe the 18th or the 19th, depending upon you all's availability. And that's all I have, Chairman.
Thank you. Okay, so when do we need to schedule a June meeting now, or do we want to do where you all, because I know what we tried to do before did not seemingly work that well. So do we want to just pick a date today, or do you want to solicit from each of the commissioners dates that they're available? I know that starts to get into the summertime, so I don't know how that works for people.
It's June 18th. Yeah, me too.
Well, what I can do, I'll email you all out an email tomorrow and get you all's feedback so that we start nailing that down. I think it would really be helpful for the staff because we've got a lot of activities going on in June. So if we know what date, we can definitely get our meeting packages put together and meet everybody's date.
Okay, great. So everybody look for your emails and please respond with availability. Okay. Commissioners updates. This is an opportunity for any commissioners to provide updates about their programs or anything else they may want to share. Are there any commissioners have any updates? Feel like we have all. Okay, great. Okay, so we will now hold the second public comments segment of the agenda. Speakers are welcome to discuss any topic. Again, all speakers are limited to 5 minutes per comment. Karen, do we have any public comment requests, either in the chat or?
I have not received any public comments, but I understand there's at least one person online, 3 people online that have requested to speak.
Karen Deagle.
Okay, so I guess our first person is Karen Deagle.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Karen Deagle, CEO of the Senior Resource Association and designated as the CTC in both Indian River County and Martin County. As well, I am the chairman of the Florida Public Transportation Association. I'm speaking to you today about the concern of the trip and equipment funding formula. It's based on the rule 41-2.014 of the Florida Administrative Code. And this formula, as Karen had mentioned earlier, it was revamped in 2021. And I'm asking today if you'd kindly consider doing an audit on this formula. What we are experiencing, when I say we, I mean, as the CTC in Indian River County and Martin County, is a year after year funding decrease, even though the number of trips and mileage increase annually. The rural and small county CTCs who are members of FPTA have shared their concern as well as I am with you today. I'd be happy to offer any transit data that you might need from the 2 counties that I operate. And also FPTA plans to have meetings with the members, the member CTCs, to provide further information and concerns about the formula structure. Again, thank you for your time today.
Okay, thank you, Karen. The next person.
Julia Davis.
Julia Davis.
Thank you. I just asked that with the planners and CTCs be able to receive a copy of FDOT's Transportation Disadvantaged Services report, the full report, which was highlighted in Agenda 4.1. If you could just email that to us, that'd be really good. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, we can take care of that.
DOT. Good. Okay.
Last one, Heidi Villa.
Okay. The last person we have so far is Heidi Villa.
Yes, I am a staff member of the Heartland Regional Transportation Planning Organization, and we actually do planning for DeSoto, Hardy, Highlands, Hendry, Glades, and Okeechobee counties. We actually help with the planning of 2 different local coordinating boards, one for the Glades Hendry Local Coordinating Board and helping technical support with the Glades Hendry CTC, and then also the DeSoto, Highlands, Hardy, Okeechobee County CTC. We help with technical assistance with them. I just wanted to thank the commissioners today of taking such consideration on the ISD application that the time limitation is considered, but the folks that have had applications going in for 4 years are not going to be prioritized, because I do know that both CTCs that we have make our technical assistance available to are hesitant because they feel that they're just rural counties and that their programs may not have as much of a weight because they're not very large, because they're rural population wise. I do know that at least one of them plans to ask for an expansion of their program that they currently have in one of the counties to additional counties, to 3 additional counties. And I just wouldn't want them to be discouraged. So again, I'm just thanking the commission for actually taking the time to really talk it out. Thank you.
Heidi, anybody else? I think that's all we have as far as public comments so far, Chair.
Thank you. This concludes our business meeting. We appreciate everyone who participated in today's meeting. Our next scheduled meeting will be posted once the staff gets availability from the commissioners and we get a date picked. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Commissioner Farron motions to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Commissioner Carter seconds.
Great. All right. So all in favor of adjourning? Say aye. Aye. All opposed? Hearing none. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.